This episode of Recording Studio Rockstars is brought to you by Isotope, Native Instruments, SAE Institute, Atom Audio, Spectra 1964, and Picker. In fact, you're hearing my voice right now recorded through a Spectra 1964 STX 100 mic pre and mixed with Isotope, Ozone, and RX on Atom Audio monitors and headphones. Grab my free mixing course at Mixmaster Bundle with the link in the show notes below. And please make sure to visit our fantastic sponsors also in the show notes and like and subscribe to our YouTube channel because it's a great way to help support this show. Now get ready to rock.
You know, some guy that looks so talented, looks a lot more talented than whoever's at the top now, but they never made it. And then some guy...
So you think there was somebody more talented than Chet Atkins?
Yeah. Well, let me put it this way. He always said he wasn't the greatest guitar player, but he was the most well-known. I mean, his name and the guitar was synonymous for a number of years. So he was the best-known guitar player. But Chet never was a rocker. You know, you talk about the teen scene song. Now, he's trying to play rock and roll, but he doesn't have that wild abandon that rock and roll has. and some of the jazz guys. He could hang with anybody. He really could. I mean, if you put him in a rock and roll band, he could play along with it, but you could tell it wasn't real rock and roll.
Welcome to Recording Studio Rockstars. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is the podcast created to help you become a rock star of the recording studio. Dreaming of a career in audio or the entertainment business? SAE Institute Nashville, in the heart of Music Row, offers hands-on programs where you'll learn on professional-grade gear with industry pros, learning through real projects, not just lectures. Explore studio production, live sound, audio for film, and a whole lot more. Or take the entertainment business program to learn about contracts, promotion, and more. With diploma, associate, and bachelor's programs, there's a path for you. Book a tour today at nashville.sae.edu or call 615-244-5848. Howdy, Rockstars. It's your host, Lid Shaw, and welcome back to Recording Studio Rockstars, bringing you into the studio to learn from recording professionals so that you can make your best record ever and be a rock star of the studio yourself. My guest today is Don Cusic, the Curb Professor of Music Industry History at Belmont University and the author of over 30 books on music culture and the music business. His latest is Chet Atkins' Mr. Guitar, a newly released biography that explores the life, legacy, and lasting influence of one of Nashville's most iconic musicians. Don has also produced albums for legends like Bobby Bare, Jeannie Seely, and Jim Ed Brown. He co-produced the Eddy Arnold Tribute album with Cheetah Chrome and collaborated with Mike Curb on an album of James Weldon Johnson songs performed by American Idol finalist Melinda Doolittle. A big thank you and a shout out to Pam Lewis and Associates for making our introduction. Please welcome Don Cusic to Recording Studio Rockstars. Don, welcome back, man. Are you ready to rock?
I am ready.
You know, I like to reveal this on the show because it's, you know, we're all tech nerds enjoying this, but you know, I didn't have it in record on the first try. So here we are on the second try. So thank you so much.
Well, sometimes it might be better for me.
right.
On record.
Yeah, and that's a fair question. You've spent time. You've spent a lot of time writing. Obviously, you do 30 books, but I know you've spent time in the studio too. I believe. Have you ever noticed or had a feeling on whether take one or take two is it always good to have a take two if you need it?
Yeah, I mean, generally, you know, if the kind of producing I'm doing, you've got to get 3 or 4 songs in a session, you know, because budgets. And so generally what you do is, you know, it's a good take, but you say, let's do it one more time.
Yeah.
And then that way, if there is something you didn't catch, you can cover it up because you can. They used to say splice it together. Remember razor blades?
Oh yeah. My first job was so my family ran a movie theater in Massachusetts, and my first job was learning how to become a movie projectionist. And I can't remember. And I also like took a tape class, so I can't remember where I learned to splice first, but it was right about the same time.
Yeah.
Learning you'd splice film and you'd splice audio tape as well.
Chet Atkins was a master at that. He was really good at splicing. And, of course, he's playing and he's producing all these other acts and stuff. And apparently that was one of his secret arsenals, because it's hard to get a splice perfect.
Yeah, yeah. There wasn't, and this isn't, you think about modern music and the splice, everybody always just says, oh, we just rock the tape at the kick drum. A lot of the Chet stuff didn't necessarily have a kick drum. Or if it did, it was not a prominent feature in the track, right?
Chet didn't like bass drums or bass guitars. He wanted his guitar, because he was an instrumentalist, and he wanted that out front. And he was always complaining about the bass was too loud or the drums were too loud. He had, of course, some of these legendary figures, drummers here in Nashville. I'm trying to think of Kenny. What's Kenny's last name?
Is there not Kenny Arnoff? No, more modern drummer.
Anyway, they were always, Chet was always saying a little softer on the drums, because you didn't have the technology you had today. When he started, mixing was how you place the musicians in the studio.
Yeah, yeah.
As opposed to and then of course better stuff came along during his lifetime. But yeah, when he started, it was pretty much direct to disc.
Wow. And, he's done, how many records did he do?
Oh, God. It's hard to count because there's so many compilations. The easy thing to say is 100 albums.
Right.
Which is what I say. But, some of them are compilation albums. You're taking this, that, and the other. Or maybe you add a song. So it's hard to say. But in the early days, he's cutting 2 and 3 albums a year.
Right, because everything's live on the floor. So it's might be combinations of having to write new material, but it might just be rehearsing, redos of previous material as well.
He was a perfectionist, and so he, and this is an interesting thing about Chet. Most musicians that I've run into in Nashville, they're very good, they're very accomplished, but they don't practice. I mean, they can pick up the guitar and play behind whoever needs to be, needs them, but they don't practice, the scales and all of that. And Chet always practiced. As good as he was, legendary, he still practiced. I think that's a good lesson for guitarists.
Yeah, and you're a guitarist yourself, right?
Hardly.
Hardly?
Barely.
Well, let's rewind a little bit. What is your, what's your, briefly story arc of being interested in music and then finding yourself as a professor at Belmont, having written 30 books and being patient while I hit record the second time?
Well, I grew up in Maryland and, of course, was in a band. Everybody was in a band then.
Yeah.
We were different. We were young guys playing country music. This is an era of the Beatles, and it wasn't cool to be playing country music. But yeah, I did and I think that's essential being in the music business, that it really helps if you were in a band at one time. Yeah. We never had a recording contract, any of that stuff. But anyway, I went to college, University of Maryland, graduated, and as soon as I graduated, I bought a VW van, built a bed in the back, and moved. First, I moved to Cookeville, Tennessee. And then that was in 72. In 73, I moved to Nashville. And of course, I had a bed to sleep in when I first got here. But that was that. And then started meeting people. I had met a couple of folks before I moved to Nashville, and they helped me. Dan Beck, Hazel Smith, the legendary Hazel Smith. I don't know if you know her or not.
I don't know if I do yet, but
yeah. Anyway, so I met them, and they would help me, and then I landed a job with Record World, where it was a trade magazine, it used to be, trades were incredibly important because they were the link between the record company and the distributors and radio and all of that. So I go from being basically homeless to being able to call up the heads of all the labels because I was, had that chair. But then, it was through that, and I kept writing. Because I'm writing journalism, but I'm also writing songs. And that's when I learned, when you go into studios to demo or even if you're jamming out, you learn how good the musicians are here in Nashville.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you were saying this earlier that, coming to Nashville as a guitar player, you sort of see these incredible guitar players and then you don't call yourself a guitar player in Nashville. I've heard people say that. I always sort of jokingly push back on that a little bit because I'm like, well, come on now. We all want to play too. Otherwise, we don't need to put it away necessarily. But it's just true. I mean, the level of musicianship here is incredible, and
even tuning. Because now we got all these. I think I could have, I would have had a better shot at a career if I could tune.
Right, because you didn't have tuners back then.
You didn't have tuners.
Well, you had probably strobe tuners, but even that was kind of, that's a big item.
Yeah, I didn't know. I never saw those. And so, you would tune and you would, you'd be a little off from perfect tuning, but it would be in tune to itself.
Right.
And then you needed for overdubs, then, it's not really.
Yeah.
So, that tuner has made a huge difference.
That's amazing. Yeah, I've never heard, I've been doing this podcast now for a decade, over 500 interviews, and that's the first time somebody's brought that up, which is a really fascinating thing to consider. Just the challenge of making a record. I wonder if the tuner came, how close it came after the advent of multi-track, because with the overdubs, that's where you certainly run into it. Otherwise, you're in the room with everybody and you just hear what they sound like.
I don't know. I know, of course, when I was in high school and college, I never ran across one.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. I picked up a guitar the other day and tuned it, and it sounded like it was in tune.
Right.
But the thing of it is, if you pick a tuner, it's just a little bit off of that red mark.
Right.
It's tuned to itself, but it's not really tuned to perfect pitch.
Yeah, and then we don't have to get too nerding out on it if we're going into the weeds, but I know there's also a question of perfect tunings for certain chord voicings on guitars that will sound right, a C chord and things. And people have said that equal tempered tuning on a guitar is basically, or piano even. Well, piano gets stretch tunings when you go down low. But on a guitar, equal tempered is really everything's just equally out of tune, they say.
That was kind of my life as a guitar player.
Right. Well, cool. So you came down here. How awesome. I had a VW camper bus as well when I finished college, and I wish I still had it. Those things were great.
Oh, they were terrific. No, I don't want mine again.
You don't want it again?
No, I don't want it again.
But you came down here with an interest in music and then found yourself on kind of the admin side of things, or how did that go for you right then?
Well, I found myself working in offices. My first job, they call it interns now. You're working for free. I got an internship with Record World, and
Record World was a label?
No, Record World was a trade magazine.
Oh, it was the trade magazine. That's right.
It was Billboard, Cashbox, and Record World at that time. And so I got the job there, which opened up a lot of doors for me. But I really had to move away from the creative side. These guys didn't want songs pitched to them. They wanted, the news of their label or their publishing company and that kind of thing. So I got to know a lot of people that way. But in terms of creativity, as in writing songs and playing, you kind of had to leave that behind. Mm-hmm. You had to. You couldn't pursue that like you do full time. Right,
because I think one of the things I've learned from songwriters in Nashville is it's a dedicated profession. I mean, it takes basically everything.
It does. It's so lucky today. These kids are so lucky. They've got Belmont and they've got Middle Tennessee State that, are just right here that can get you in the doors. And of course, we have guest speakers come up, so they get to know all these great people. And then we have a program in L.A., one in New York. So they don't have to come in sleeping in a van. They come in sleeping in a dorm room, and life's a whole lot easier. And you're in Belmont particularly, and all the doors are open to you. You come from somewhere in Kansas or Iowa or Seattle or something, and all these doors are open. They don't appreciate it as much, but I would have crawled across cut glass to meet, to have some of these opportunities these kids do, and they don't even show up for it sometimes.
No, so who used that in a lyric? That just sounds like a great lyric. I would have crawled across cut glass. Sounds like somebody in country music would have put that in a song somewhere.
I don't know.
You should have done it. See, the songwriter was waiting in there. I've heard you say a couple of things already. Well, that's cool. So then what about the writing? When did that become a thing for you? It was that because you were in the trade magazine, that was writing, right?
Beginning, yeah. And they put together what gave me access is every year they would put together a spotlight on country music. And then you'd have to go out and interview all these people. Bob Beckham was doing the publishing. You get that. You do whoever's running a label. All of those things that you wrote up. They were short pieces. So that led me to get a job with the Country Music Association as a staff writer. And they have a magazine that they put out a couple times a year. I don't know if it's monthly or bi-monthly. But anyway, that. And then I went back with a paying gig at Record World. So that's really, my roots are as a writer, and I finally realized at one point, that's really what I am, a writer.
Yeah.
You don't realize exactly who you are at first. You're thinking, I'd like to be somebody else, or I'd like to be like so-and-so, but really it's not you.
I thought I wanted to be a pilot until I rode the octopus ride at the amusement park and threw up all my onion rings on my friend next to me.
Not a Blue Angels kind of guy, huh?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I knew that I loved playing music as well, and I came to Nashville, and I was playing in a band and traveling after college when I went into a studio, and was really noticing where I was. And at that point, I looked around at all the flashing lights and the tape machine and the console, and I was like, I think I got to go learn how to do this, And so then I decided to come down to MTSU and do the college here, and I've stayed, I've been here ever since. But for me, I didn't come here as a big country music fan and passionate about doing country records, which is a little bit of a missed opportunity. I mean, this is the greatest place in the world to make country records. But it's been so great to learn about all of the history and, realize that I might not have known about it, but I always loved it, because it's infused into all the styles of music, especially Chet Atkins. And believe it or not, for me, it's actually recent to learn that was called Travis picking,
Yeah.
I knew what it sounded like, and I've been doing versions of it.
Well, actually, there's several versions of it. Merle Travis, they called it thumb picking in Kentucky.
Okay.
And so, that style is your thumb hits the tonic. So if you're in C, it's dum dum C, or it would be C G 1-5 dum 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 dum, and then you pick with one finger the melody. What Chet did, and Chet heard Merle Travis on the radio. At night the ionosphere contracts and those AM, there's AM radio still there. AM bounces off, and so you can get these distant places. And he picked up Merle Travis coming from Cincinnati. He said that if he had heard Travis more often, he would have just played like him. But what Chet developed, and he wanted to be accompanied without an accompanist. He wanted, just to be him.
Right.
Let's look at open strings. A, D, E, D. A, D, E, D. And so, and it's almost like your thumb is in a circle.
Right.
And that's the finger picking style that Chet developed. And he's playing three fingers on the melody. So that's the revolutionary style of guitar playing derived from the thumb picking that Chet created. And, it's not terribly influential because there's only a relative handful of people There's a Chet Atkins Appreciation Society every year
Right.
that they come and they have a meeting, and you get all of these finger pickers down there. But it's really, you don't hear, it's limited. It's a certain sound. And of course, Chet played single string. He played other styles. But that's Chet Atkins style. That's the finger picking style.
So the E, A, and D strings, Chet might have thought that's for the thumb.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the bass movement is. The G, B, and E strings up top, that's where your melodies happen.
Well, it's kind of like stride piano.
Mm-hmm.
He liked that stride, if you're familiar with James P. Johnson and that stride piano from back in the 1920s.
Yeah.
He wanted that. And the other thing was that he was born in East Tennessee, a place called Luttrell near Knoxville. And everybody in East Tennessee played. It was the mountains. And so, on Saturday nights, there'd be a session. You roll up the rugs. He had asthma that was horrible. Oh. And his mother wrote to, they were divorced, wrote to his father, said, you got to do something with him. You got to take him to Georgia. So Chet goes to Georgia, and his teen years, his developmental years really happened in Georgia, when nobody else was playing music like they were in East Tennessee. So he could just sit by himself, which he did, and play over and over again and try to get this new sound worked out. So about 17, by the time he left, because of World War II, mm-hmm. His father went back into a government job. And so he had to leave there and move back to East Tennessee.
Rockstars, if you want the ultimate toolkit for your music, check out Complete 15 from Native Instruments. With 165 instruments and over 150,000 sounds to choose from, it is the most powerful creative tool in your studio. From Contact 8 to Massive X, Battery, and Guitar Rig 7 Pro, you've got everything you need to create in any genre. Pair that with Native Instruments control keyboards and machine hardware, and you get next-level integration that makes music creation fun, fast, and seamless. Head on over to nativeinstruments.com and use the code ROCK10 for 10% off. So did Chet have to go into World War II? Did he have to go serve?
His asthma was so bad.
Oh, because the asthma, yeah.
Asthma, he couldn't, so he got out of that.
Wow. So yeah, and it's interesting to hear that, because it's so true. Like sitting around playing with other people, you kind of have to just, the song, or you kind of learn it, and that's what you do. But it doesn't, it's like when you're on stage with your band, it's like no noodling in between songs, and in order to come up with something new, you have to noodle. You have to be able to sit there and do it over and over again and sound pretty bad for a while until you figure it out.
And Chet's father was a music teacher.
Yeah,
he was a singing, what they call him, singing, a lead singer when they had these gospel things, these gospel church services. He would be the music minister. And so Chet learned stuff from them. He would get classical magazines, and every now and then you'd hear Chet say something about, well, I saw it in one of my father's magazines. I don't know if you know how Chet talked to you. He had that kind of quiet talk that he did, and that was the Chet Atkins, very quiet, very laid back.
Was he a comedian as well? Did he have a good sense of humor? I mean, I know he was doing the Grand Ole Opry. Was he part of the show, like Hee Haw? Was that part of his world as well?
No, he played on the Opry. He never was a member. He played on it kind of as a guest picker.
Okay,
and he would go out there and just be part of the show that way. Hee Haw, he was on that at the time he was in Hee Haw. Hee Haw came along. He was an executive at RCA. He had his own career, so he'd make a guest star there sometimes. And they had the $1 Million Band, where they had all these top musicians, and he was one of them that they would play.
Yeah.
But no, he was he's never in the Grand Ole Opry. The thing about when we talk about musicians, another factor that defines a musician is that they're constantly playing.
Yeah.
I mean, constantly playing. I remember one time, a very famous musician, and he was married, and his wife finally left him, and he would be playing, and she said, "We need to talk." He said, "Yeah, I'm listening," and he was still playing, and it drove her crazy. But that's true, and that's another thing I discovered about myself. I wasn't always playing.
Yeah.
You know, I did not have that kind of drive. But a real musician has to always be playing.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I mean, it's a tough sentence to hear, you know, because I think about it and I'm like, I love playing music, but I'm not always playing music.
Yeah.
But I do like picking it up a fair amount. But it's so true, and I think about the musicians that I know here now today that are doing great stuff, and I think they're playing an awful lot. You know.
You ever been around Tommy Emmanuel?
No, I
the
haven't,
whole
no.
time you're talking to him, he's playing.
Just playing the whole
He
time.
never stops. I mean, I think he has to stop before the camera goes on the TV just to kick the show off, but he never stops playing.
It's pretty cool. I mean, I had Blessing Offer was on the podcast once, and he's the only, one of a couple of guests that were playing a guitar while they were talking on the show too.
Was he still playing?
He was still playing while he was talking, yeah. I was at first I was nervous. I was like, oh, is the mix and all this digital stuff going to like remove the guitar by the time you hear it? Hopefully not. Now, so you played, but you've also produced and spent some time in the studios, right? So,
yes.
For example, what was it like to work with Bobby Bare and do that?
Well, Bobby Bare's reputation, he's very laid back, but that's not true when you get into the studio always. There's different kinds of producers. There's that engineer type producer, there's that musician type producer, and then there's a producer who collects some songs, makes sure everything runs well in the studio. And that's the kind of producer I was with Bare, because I'm hiring great musicians. I don't need, I need to stay out of their way. And Bare, I bring him some songs, but he's pretty well established as Bobby Bare for then. So we had some great times. And the other thing was Chet produced Bobby Bare. So here I am in the RCA B. We cut the basic tracks in RCA Studio B. So here I am sitting in the chair. I don't know if it was the exact same chair, but sitting in the chair that Chet sat in, producing a Bobby Bare who's out in the studio doing his thing.
Wow!
So that was, it was I couldn't think about it too much because it would just sort of warp your mind. But it would come to bear sometimes.
This was when Chet was living, or this was after?
No, he was dead.
He was dead then.
Yeah.
And you knew Chet well at all during
I knew
the time
Chet,
that he was
but
alive?
I didn't know him well.
Yeah.
I wasn't part of his gang. I didn't play golf. Or I don't play golf. So, Chet was, that was part of the Chet's group. But I'd see him. I interviewed him a couple times. Not real long, in-depth interviews. But I'd have to call him to get some quotes for stuff and whatnot. So I knew him, but I wasn't his buddy.
And then, maybe we should move on also to your inspiration for writing this book, Chet Atkins, Mr. Guitar. You had been a fan of Chet's playing all along before you knew him too? Or did you find that like studying his music and writing the book really deepened your fandom? Mm-hmm. I assume you're a fan of
Yes,
Chet.
Yes. Well,
it's kind of that first.
It's kind of odd because I get asked constantly, how did you choose to write Roger Miller or Chet Atkins or Eddy Arnold, any of the things I've done, and it's very unsatisfying for me to give the answer to an interviewer, because the true answer is they come to you. At some point, I'd been around Chet. I certainly knew who he was. I knew people and had talked about Chet. And then one day, somehow, it just kind of absorbs, I need to write, there needs to be a book written about Chet Atkins, because there never had been a biography of Chet Atkins.
I'm pulling up the book cover here. There
never had been a book on him, and I thought, I need to do this. So, I mean, that's kind of, it sounds like da-da-da-da-da-da, coming out of the third world there, or the cosmic sounds.
So on the book cover there,
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what guitar that is that he's playing?
No, I don't. I couldn't tell. Chet, by the time he finished life, he was basically playing a gut string guitar.
Okay.
Nylon, because of his fingers. It's easier on his fingers.
Mm-hmm.
He had to, he came to fame with an electric guitar that he had to create. He would buy a pickup. Remember a Radio Shack? Do you remember a store
I
called
remember Radio Shack. I loved Radio Shack.
Well, he used to, there was something, and there was a Popular Mechanics magazine.
Oh, that was a great one, too.
So anyway, he would order stuff and find stuff and made himself, out of an acoustic guitar, an electric guitar.
Oh, fascinating.
And so and he needed, the reason that the electric guitar came into existence because guitar had to be louder.
Mm-hmm.
Because it was drowned out by the horns and the banjo and other things. So it had to be louder. And so that's what he did. And in his early days, he's playing a guitar. He play Darmond.
The guitar itself?
Yeah. What was the name of that guitar? It was a
Darmond,
guy,
D'Angelico. Yeah.
The D'Angelico guy made those in Brooklyn, and he bought one from him. And of course, the big thing at that time was an archtop guitar.
Yeah.
That was
and that D'Angelico was that had the pickup in it. It was electrified, or it was acoustic first?
In fact, Mr. D'Angelico did not like the idea, but Chet himself got a drill and installed. He'd have it on the bridge.
Wow.
Above the bridge, to make an electric. Now then, there was a guy from Gresh Guitars that approached him. Now Les Paul had the Les Paul guitar,
right?
And so there's an advantage of having a great guitarist with that, endorsing the guitar. So Chet was kind of envious of Les Paul, and the Gresh guy came along, and Gresh had decided, well, the way we're going to sell more guitars is to get a well-known guitar player. And they had a couple of session guys or session people who liked Gresh, but then Chet got hold of that. And he helped design some of those guitars, and that's what he played mostly for his big years when he was putting out all of his albums.
Was the Chet Atkins Gresh guitar?
Gresh guitar.
Yeah,
it was the Country Gentleman. If you're familiar with the Gresh line, Country Gentleman, which is interesting because when you talk about Chet, he's a legend in country, but he also produced and played on Elvis's first recordings.
Wow.
Not the Sun Record stuff, but his first RCA
in
recordings.
Memphis or here in Nashville?
Here in Nashville. He played on the Everly Brothers. He was friends
Was that at House of David, or is that a little later?
Everly Brothers?
No, the studio, House of David. I know that had a story about a special secret door where Elvis could come in, park, and then elevate into the studio.
I think that's a whole different story. that Elvis, some say he showed up and some say he didn't.
Right.
He was playing the Gresh Country Gentleman, and here's the thing: the Beatles. New York, February 9th, Ed Sullivan Show. The Beatles are introduced to American audience.
Uh-huh.
And what is George Harrison, the lead guitar, playing but a Chet Atkins Country Gentleman guitar?
Wow.
And he loved those Gresh guitars because he played. You had the Country Gentleman, then you had the Tennessean, which was a step below and more affordable, and then you had the. What was the first thing that George Harrison had? It was a solid body Gresh. It was
I don't
called.
know.
I've lost it, but anyway,
I'd probably recognize it if I saw it, but I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not. Unfortunately, I wish I was more of an encyclopedia of all the different guitar models.
Well, anyway, somebody in Liverpool was doing research on George Harrison and got access into his house and his bedroom. And he had like 10 or 11 albums of Chet on there.
Oh, wow.
So here you've got not only country, but you've got Elvis, you've got the Everly Brothers, you've got the Beatles, and of course he recorded with Paul McCartney later. All of that wrapped together in Chet Atkins. I mean, that's pretty hard to believe.
That is pretty wild. And there was a ton of that fingerpicking going on in Nashville at the time too, or did that just sort of, did Chet really sort of like light a little bit of a fire that got everybody interested in doing more of that here?
Well, they had to if Chet played on the record. But Chet is producing. He did not want to play. He wanted to concentrate on the record, on what was going on. Now, that's going to vary from artist to artist. Some artists need more help than others.
Yeah.
When I was talking about the different kinds of producers, Chet, of course, he was a musician. He could do the engineering, but a lot of times people would say, he doesn't do anything. He's there. The musicians know, hey, if I can't cut it, he can come out and play it. and Chet would ease their minds. Ray Edenton, a famous rhythm guitar player, he says, Chet, I can't get this. And Chet, don't worry, I'll take care of it later.
That's funny.
You had that. So Chet, so you had the engineer producer, the musician producer, and the I call it atmosphere producer. You make sure that you've got a good atmosphere in the studio.
Right.
And part of that also is finding songs. Now, of course, everybody writes today, whether they can or not. They've got their name on it.
Right.
But he would have to, on certain artists, really come up with the songs for them. He was always on the lookout for songs. And so that was part of being a producer, finding the song that fit the artist. And one of the reasons that was needed was because an artist has to be on the road all the time to make a living. And they don't have time to be...
Yeah.
They don't have time to be searching for songs, going to publishing company to publishing company. And the other thing is Bill Anderson, because Bill Anderson's a great writer. And he needed songs for the next album. Somebody saying, well, I thought you wrote. He said, yeah, but this hand has been signing autographs instead of writing songs. and so you've got all those distractions when it comes down to writing.
Rock stars, are you ready to unlock the full potential of your mixes and masters? Then you need iZotope Ozone 12. This complete tool set gives you 20 pro modules, including the new bass control, unlimiter, and stem EQ, plus the IRC5 maximizer for loud, clean mixes and masters without distortion, including the new mastering assistant that guides, not decides, so you are always in control. Go to iZotope.com and use the code ROCK10 for 10% off. Wow. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I remember when I was in school learning about, record contracts were 6-month cycles or something like that at one point. You're supposed to turn in a new record every 6 months. And, by the time we were coming out of school and making records, you'd hear stories of artists like, 9 Inch Nails taking 5 years to get their next record together.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether I'm proud or embarrassed to say, but I went into that world where we took, a year, 2 years to make a record easy. And that was 7 days around the clock,
well,
sleeping in the studio kind of.
You could do that when pop and rock were rolling and you were down to one format. You had the LP.
Right.
So you could spend all that time because you'd have a payoff. Now, country was one of the big secrets was country financially was carrying a lot of labels, but they did it from quantity. The 45 or... Well, it started with the 78. Up until 1958, they still had 78s. The 45 for the jukebox, that was the country market. And then as we get into the 60s, and what changed this is folk music. Remember, folk laid the groundwork for 60s rock. Because it was, of course, Dylan's a prime example. But a lot of these guys, the Beatles started as a folk group, the Quarrymen. Right. And so they started as a folk group, and then they got into rock. If you look at the Byrds, some of those other early 60s rockers, they start in folk music. Right. And so that folk was key, and kids started buying albums for folk music because folk wasn't dependent upon the hit singles like rock was. And so you've got the album, the shift from being a singles-oriented business to an album-oriented business.
Yeah.
And that came, it was in the 60s. There wasn't a Billboard chart for country albums until 1964. I mean, that's hard to believe. There weren't many albums out with country.
So the charts wouldn't, but the charts would deal with the singles too, right?
Oh, the charts dealt. What you had at Billboard starting in 1955 was the Hot 100. And that was the most popular songs. And that kind of messed things up because, I say it messed things up, it actually evened it out. When rock and roll started, here you have country boys coming out of Memphis, Carl Perkins, Elvis, Johnny Cash, Roy Orbison. They're all country boys. They're white Southern boys. Mm-hmm. They're signed as country acts. Well, it didn't, the whole phrase, it don't sound country. It doesn't sound like country music to me.
Yeah.
So here you have them dominating the single charts for like 2 years. I mean, Elvis's records were number one country as well as number one Hot 100. And they finally got together, and some people in Nashville went to talk to the folks in New York and said, keep the rock and rollers off of our charts. This isn't country music. And so after about 2 years, they did. They kind of separated it back. Although when Elvis died, he was on country charts more than he was on rock and roll pop charts.
Wow, that's fascinating. I didn't know that. So the rock and roll chart was a new chart just one day, just like a hip hop chart or a rap chart would have been a new thing.
There never was a rock and roll chart.
Oh, there never was.
Never was. People would say rock and roll, but it was the popular as in not the sound, not Eddie Fisher and Joe Stafford and those folks. Pop as in what sells the most, what is the most popular. And so that ended up going to the Hot 100. And the Hot 100 could have, in fact, radio could program this right. You could have the Beatles, you could have Motown, you could have Frank Sinatra, you could have Dean Martin. And then if you had a song like Battle of New Orleans, a country record, or El Paso from Marty Robbins, that would be popular, pop too. So that becomes a catch-all chart. And country, it kind of had to pass the test of being country. Yeah. Which basically was defined by country radio.
That's fascinating. With Chet's music and the stuff that he was recording, how do you feel like the balance was between stuff that he was composing versus covers of other songs for him in his career?
Chet started out, when he got signed, the publisher, one of the Auerbach brothers with Hill and Range, said, can you write? And I said, yeah. He really couldn't, although he'd written a couple of instrumentals. And Steve Scholes.
Did she mean, or did they mean write in terms of singing?
I mean songs.
Songs, vocal
songs. And then they thought he was a singer. Well, it was a rude awakening, because Chet had this secret ambition to be a singer because he knew the singers were the stars. But he gets signed, and he's not a very good singer. So he has to, at that point, the push was original songs. Then he cuts a song called, there was a hit for not Andrews Sisters, the Chordettes, called, dun, 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 dun. What is this song called? Mr. Sandman.
Right.
And after that, he was looking to make covers because, he didn't write that much. He continued to write, or if you want to say, make up songs on the guitar. But then he goes into a very MOR stage.
What does that mean?
Middle of the road.
Middle of the road, okay.
Very adult oriented. And so that's a softer sound. That's part of the Nashville sound. There's violins and instead of fiddles.
Such a cool sound, though. It's so funny. It's funny that it would be called MOR or that it would be called, adult, as in it's a softer sound. And now when I listen back to it, it's so provocative and or evocative. It's just the sound just, it's like three-dimensional coming out of the speakers.
Well, I had a student not that long ago who had heard Patti Page doing Tennessee Waltz, which is, big strings and all of that. Mm-hmm. And he thought it was the most wonderful sound he had ever heard. I mean, we've all heard Tennessee Waltz by Patti Page, years ago. But it's new to this generation today.
Yeah.
They haven't heard that sound.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun. I mean, you must experience that as a teacher too. I noticed through interns and, just having a daughter myself and other young people is seeing them discover music and hearing them, especially musicians, I'm thinking in that context, like hearing a band arrive at a song or a style and they're performing it and it sounds, just like something. It's maybe the Rolling Stones would be an easy one to say. They'd probably know what that was, but it might sound like something else. It might sound like a Warren Zevon track or something. And then you reference the music and they'd never heard of the artist that they sound just like.
Yeah.
And that's really fascinating to me. So they're like discovering it maybe other ways too, just through the sound being passed down, or maybe it's just a natural.
I was at a session one time, told a guy, I want a Dwayne Eddy guitar. He looked at me like, what is that?
Right.
I want a Dwayne Eddy sound, playing the bass string. So, yeah.
That's great. Well, what surprised you most in your research about Chet Atkins? And do you think like his superfans would want to know anything come to mind?
What surprised me the most about Chet Atkins was not Chet Atkins himself. It was a book I wrote before the Chet Atkins book called Nashville Sound, that one right there. And I traced all the music things in Nashville. And I learned that at the end of World War II, in 1945, Nashville did not have a single recording studio or record label in town. 15 years later, 1960, it's known all over the world as Music City, USA.
What was the year that it didn't have a single one?
1945.
45, right.
And prior to that. Now, radio stations would have studios, but there wasn't a single recording studio. And there, 3 guys from WSM started Castle Recording Studio.
Oh, yeah, Castle. I've done a record there with my brother.
Yeah, that's right at the end of 1945, but they started releasing records in 1946. And a guy named Jim Boulay, which looks like it should be spelled bullet, unless you're French or Belgian, what he was, started Bullet Records, and they cut that black gospel, white gospel, pop, country, the whole gamut. And the first recordings that Chet made were on Bullet Records. So it's a combination of those 2 books that I made that big discovery. And you can hear Chet's guitar blues. It was a 2, you had to do 2 songs on a record.
Right.
And so you heard Chet's sound, the very early sound there. That surprised me. And it surprises a lot of people because, you think Music City, USA, there's always been record labels around and it wasn't.
Yeah. Well, I remember hearing that Wayne Moss's studio, Cinderella Sound up in Madison, was one of the first studios. Maybe it was one of the first multi-track studios. I'm not sure. But
Could
do you know
be.
if that is and when I listen to the Chet Atkins records and I hear harmonica, sax, fiddle, stuff like that, it makes me wonder if I'm hearing some of these same players that I heard on Area Code 615 and Barefoot Jerry and all that kind of stuff.
That's the key right there. It was a group of musicians, and actually that's the core group that played on Dylan's stuff, on Blonde on Blonde and the others. Dylan recorded all or part of 5 albums here in Nashville.
Wow, yeah.
In Columbia Studio B, which is just 10 steps down from my office.
Ooh, that's cool. I have a feeling we're going to be talking a lot about that studio too.
So Wayne's studio came out of that 615 group. No, the first studio on what became Music Row was the Quonset hut.
Okay.
That Owen Bradley built. He bought a house and knocked out the middle floor, and then that was the first studio, and he bought a Quonset hut really for what we'd say today videos. At that point, they were shooting. Television had just come in. So, they were trying, well, how do we program television? Well, maybe it's like
Just need a big space.
Yeah, you need a space, and you need pictures to go along with the sound.
So, what is a Quonset hut? I mean, I think for a visual, for somebody my age, it's like if you grew up watching MASH, that might have been one of the first places you saw it, or old military movies, you'd see it.
That's where it came out of, the military, because you had to. First of all, it's very safe. It's got that rounded top.
It's essentially a half of a tube or something, and you're just on
so
you
need to house a whole bunch of soldiers at one time, or you need to, invaded a territory and you needed a place to set up. That's what the Quonset. They were built very quickly, pretty cheaply, but a bomb had to hit right on them in order for it to be wiped out.
I see. So it was sort of deflected off otherwise.
What would you call it?
Just the shape and the corrugated metal.
According to that, then it's a very safe thing to have.
That's pretty wild. Do you know where the word Quonset comes from? That might be too deep a question.
Came out of the Army. I don't know. Probably a Mr. Quonset invented it. I don't know. I got to ask Mike that question.
Are you ready to launch your career in the audio or entertainment business? SAE Institute Nashville, right here in the heart of Music Row, offers hands-on programs to prepare you for the industry. From studio production and live sound to audio for film and a whole lot more. You'll learn by doing, working with professional-grade gear alongside experienced industry pros. If you're more into the business side of entertainment, SAE's Entertainment Business Program teaches essential basics like contracts and promotion to help you navigate the industry. With diploma, associate, or bachelor's degrees, there's a path for everyone. Plus, Career Services supports graduates as they take the next step. Want to see it for yourself? Immerse yourself in Nashville's exciting music scene and book a tour today at nashville.sae.edu or call 615-244-5848. Howdy, Rockstars. We're back now for the jam session, a.k.a. the second half of the show. My guest today is Don Cusic, joining us here at Ready to Rock Studios. And Don, are you ready to jam?
Why not?
You detail Chet's collaboration in the book with legends like Elvis, Dolly Parton, the Everly Brothers. Was there one artist partnership that really stood out to you as particularly transformative for his career?
Steve Sholes.
Steve Sholes?
Steve Sholes was an executive at RCA, and he was there before World War II and then went and served in World War II and came out and rejoined RCA. And he's the one who signed Chet to the label. And this is an interesting story. Well, first of all, Chet's playing in Denver at the time on a radio station, and he can't. It's hard to find him because he'd been fired from the previous radio station, and they finally track him down, and they set up a time in Chicago to record. And he tells the lead singer, who's Shorty Thompson, whose son is going to be Wayne Carson Thompson later, and he wrote "Always on My Mind" and Soul Deep and a bunch of great hits. Well, anyway, Shorty says, "Well, I'll come with you because you need a singer." And Chet says, "No, I think I'm going to do it myself." And so Shorty said, "Chet, I've been thinking you don't need to come back." So he gets fired because Shorty thinks it's going to open up doors for him.
Right.
But anyway, the date in Chicago, meanwhile in Nashville, and this is in 1946, in August. Meanwhile, in Nashville, Paul Cohen, who was the head of Decca Records, asked Ernest Tubb, who was a big, big act, would he mind recording in Nashville? And Nashville the studio had a huge #1 pop hit, so they knew that hits could come out of there. And Ernest Tubb said yes. And Owen Bradley always said that if Ernest Tubb had said no, we would not have become a recording center. That's how important getting, Decca and then the other labels followed. But those are on the same dates. There's a little leeway because Ernest Tubb's date is one day after Chet Atkins. But here you have Chet Atkins and Owen Bradley, who is the session guy with Paul Cohen, both cutting important records basically on the same date.
That's fascinating.
I know. I mean, you talk about being surprised at things. That's one of the things I was surprised at, because you couldn't have dreamed that up.
Well, and I love your reminder that, a place has to be kind of born in that way. Like Nashville wasn't a recording hub until they were both invited here to record, and then it became, that sort of kicked it off. And that's a good reminder, I think, to any of us, particularly to young people who are in a place that may or may not be a hub yet, to realize, be reminded that it is possible to start something. I've become fascinated with Muscle Shoals and Rick Hall, and those are great examples of that too. I mean, you think about Nirvana in Seattle, and all the other bands there, and there was that whole grunge thing.
Well, we're getting it rap in Atlanta now.
Yeah,
because Atlanta's becoming a real center for rap music. So
yeah, so it's pretty wild. It's just always good to remember, like, if it ain't there now, you could always start it.
Yeah, although it always ends up being an accident. It's just like they didn't know. Well, first of all, Chicago was the main center for country music before World War II.
That's wild.
And they lost their sponsor. There was a guy named Red Foley who was the key announcer for Star on WLS in Chicago, and he left and joined the Grand Ole Opry, and that caused the sponsor Alka-Seltzer to drop the show, and so they didn't get on the network anymore, and Nashville did get on the network.
Right, because back then, in order to be a hub of anything, you had to have radio, and you had to be broadcasting. And like you said, you needed the sponsors. Yeah. Or else the radio didn't exist.
You know what I hear today? Young people say, I don't listen to the radio. I hate the radio, because, they've got these options. And when I start teaching, and I'm saying radio was the most important medium for the music industry for years. I mean, that's what carried it.
Yeah.
They kind of find that hard to believe, but it was. Radio was the way that you discovered music.
Well, it's also interesting to think about radio and the advertising element integrating in order to make music possible in that way. Mm-hmm. And then, I don't know if this makes any sense, but music maybe separated itself from that for decades. And then with this world of musicians and social media and things, it almost seems to have reintegrated. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was just always there.
It's hard to, it's hard to go step by step. How, when you talk about creating this sound and creating this center, it's hard to see step by step how it happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things with Nashville in 1950, a radio disc jockey, David Cobb, was introduced in the Red Foley show and said, now from Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, USA, here we have Red Foley. And the program director called him in the office and said, that's the greatest thing I've ever heard. Keep using it. So, that thing about great. Fake it till you make it?
Yeah.
Well, that's what Nashville has done. They were not Music City, USA in 1950. Although in 1950, the number one record at the beginning of the year and the number one record at the end of the year had Nashville connections.
Wow.
First, it was number one in January because of Patti Page in Tennessee Waltz, which was the B-side of Santa Claus Boogie, which is why it was released at Christmas to play Santa Claus Boogie. And the end of the year, it was Red Foley with Chattanooga Shoeshine Boy.
Wow. That's pretty wild. So we were also talking about the Quonset hut, and I'd love to spend a little time talking about Chet recording in Nashville and the studios and the sounds. And you also mentioned, he recorded over a long period of time, so that changed even the approach to the drums. Mm-hmm. What were some favorite studios for Chet here in Nashville?
Well, what happened was RCA set up an office. They didn't really have, they rented, it was called Trafco. If you go to McGavock Street, just off of Music Row, and that's what, and the Methodists used that, the Film and Radio Commission used that place. Chet never liked it. He said the bass keeps rumbling around in there. But so that's the place he recorded. And then the studio, what was the name of the Castle Studio?
Castle.
He records there.
That's Castle out in Franklin?
Well, no. The Castle Studio went under in what year was it? 50 something, because 52, 55. Because the head of WSM, see, the engineers worked for WSM, and they had Castle Recording Studio, and there were some others who had publishing companies. And so Jack DeWitt, the president, said, well, if you're going to be with WSM, you got to get rid of all those other things you're working with. He was concerned about the license, losing the license.
Right.
And so that's, and the WSM engineers were going to have to update. It was going to cost them money. And that's when Owen Bradley steps in and starts building studios.
And Owen's the one who built the Quonset hut.
He built the Quonset hut, but that came later. Let's say around 53. He was, it was a place in Hills. It was on 3rd Avenue, 3rd and Lindsley. And then he went to Hillsborough Village.
So 3rd and Lindsley, where there's a club now, was there once a studio there?
No,
or is that
it was a block off.
Just the location.
It was maybe 2nd and Lindsley.
Yeah.
But then they tripled the rent, so they had to leave.
Right.
So several places he was looking at. Hillsborough Village, you can see a sign on the wall down there.
Wow.
Where he started there. And then, so Owen starts building studios. There's Castle Recording Studio. Fred Rose had a studio for demos to put songs down on. And there was, some little studios, but then RCA built RCA, which is now Historic Studio B.
Right. We have RCA A, which is, I think, still going.
Oh, yeah.
At Ben's place now. And then RCA B.
Yeah, RCA B came before RCA A.
Oh, really? Was it called B at first?
No, it was just the RCA studio.
Right. Yeah.
So RCA's B, which is, tourists today, that started, and that's where all these studios were for rent. They, RCA controlled it, but they were for rent. And so Chet was a session guy. He was a session player for a number of years. And even when he got a job with RCA, he wasn't getting rich, and so he needed the sessions, and he liked the sessions. To be, because
he was always playing.
To play. Yeah.
He was always playing anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So tell us about B. Like, what's it like? I believe it or not, I'm embarrassed to say I've never done the tour.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I guess I was never a tourist in Nashville. That was my problem.
Well, if you come to my book signing on June 20th, which is Chet's 101st birthday.
Wow, all right.
It'll be at RCA Studio B.
All right, cool. So how would you describe RCAB? So remember, our audience is, a lot of listeners as well. So is it's a one-room studio with one control room? How's it laid out?
Well, no, it was built with, a studio and a control room. But there are also a couple of offices for Chet and for a guy who did what they call custom. And the custom stuff is you have a band in Iowa and you come to town and you want to record, they'll rent you the studio time. So there was that, and now it's changed where the offices were. They've taken those out, and it's a little display on equipment and stuff. But the actual studio part is still there. One of the things that they had to learn with building studios is acoustics, and if you build everything in a straight line, the sound dies in the corners. That's an oversimplification.
Right.
That's what happens. And so what happened, they had an engineer who cut up these little triangles and hung them around to give them a better sound. At the Quonset hut, what they did was Owen had blankets stuck up there because a Quonset hut without all that stuff. It's just, every
Right,
time you say, say something.
You're mirroring a big metal tube with nothing.
Yeah, and so you have, they had bales of hay for a while when they were doing those TV tapings. They had wood on there. That was part of the movie set. And all of this, they learned to control the sound. Blankets.
Was there much of a inside-outside issue with sound too, or was Nashville just a sort of a smaller place back then? So unless somebody showed up with a hot rod car right outside the door, there wasn't a lot of sound coming in to invade it.
Yeah, you didn't have all of it.
Or a train. If you were near a train track, they probably just avoided it.
And so they didn't have to. They could be away from the sound enough. And then, like I said, they learned acoustics. So that now, you need the sound broken up. The pillars in the middle of the room helps, and stuff like that. Statues in the corner.
Yeah. Do you know Matt Rossbang in Memphis? So he had worked at Sam Phillips Recording for a while, and he was at Sun Records, and he has a studio now, and I think it's got a big pillar in the middle of the studio too. So when you said that, it reminded me. Shout out to you, Matt. If he's listening, he'll know what I'm talking about. So maybe these are questions that I'll ask him anyway, and I don't know if it's fair or not. Answer it however you want. But like, if you had to mic up Chet Atkins' guitar amp, how would you do that?
Well, I have no idea. I don't I don't deal with microphones. That I know that Chet could plug into the board sometimes, and sometimes he would have a mic. But what he wanted on the electric stuff, he wanted the mic right up to the amplifier. Obviously, I mean that's as close as you can get. The thing about having it to the amplifier, and he recorded with orchestras, is that you could pull it out and then redo your part, and that's what Chet always did.
Right.
He did, these Hollywood Strings and stuff like that albums, and so he wanted to do his part over again to get it right.
Right.
And so he recorded in his studio. What Chet was mainly concerned with was sound, the sound of the guitar, and so he had I don't know how to pronounce it, Delvecchio guitars. Real cheap, comes out of Brazil, but they got a very distinctive sound. That's what excited him.
That was his acoustic or his electric?
It's acoustic. And then the gut string, he had Juan Estruc. Is that how you pronounce that?
I don't know.
Anyway, he liked that. The Haskell Hale, if you're familiar with him, used to make guitars, and they had a great sound. He had a couple of those. For regular acoustic guitars, he liked a Martin D45 a lot.
Yeah.
But you don't find that very often. And
well, on some of the recordings, the acoustics, I mean, you got the finger-picked acoustics, but then you also have that chung, 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 just the tight chords. And it's just such a great sound. I mean, the combinations and sonically too, the chord guitars, I don't remember which one I was listening to and thinking about that, but it has this sort of tiny quality to it. You hear the chords, but you really just hear the stringing and the chunking, but it's not really taking up a ton of space in the sound and the mix. So I'm guessing maybe they were doing things like EQing and changing the way things sounded a little bit, or just choosing the right mics. But a lot of it must have had to have been also just like you got to play the right sound out of your instrument, whether it's drums or guitars. And so really no bass. I didn't really notice much bass on the records.
That's true. Yes, but very low.
Right.
And the other thing is, it wasn't until they allowed electric basses to come in that you could control the tone a little better.
Right.
Because it was always a stand-up bass. Oh, and Bradley told, who Norbert Putnam was? He was a great bass player. He said, you bring in, when Norbert had moved up, you bring in an acoustic bass. I don't want any of that R&B stuff. That electric bass, that was R&B. That was rock and roll. And so it took a while for them to get the get the electric bass on record.
Hey, rock stars, imagine sitting down at your DAW with 165 instruments and over 150,000 sounds to choose from. That's what Complete 15 from Native Instruments delivers, the most powerful creative tool in your studio. Inside, you'll find Contact 8, Massive X, battery, and Guitar Rig 7 Pro, giving you everything you need to create in any genre. Plus, you'll get inspiring sampled instruments like upright bass and electric keys, along with endless expansions to keep your sound fresh. Whether you're producing hip-hop, scoring films, or creating EDM bangers, Complete 15 has you covered. Pair that with Native Instruments control keyboard and machine hardware, and you get next-level integration that makes music creation fast, fun, and seamless. Go to nativeinstruments.com and use the code ROCK10 for 10% off. Well, it's sort of funny. I think about, I had this vision just now of the acoustic bass player who comes in. If we're familiar with the drummer who comes in on a session and sort of brings the bar band drumming to the recording studio, and that being a bit of an obstacle when you're producing a record, what would the upright bass player, maybe it would be the upright bass player who really wanted to be in a rockabilly band, you know, starts rocking out and you're like, oh,
It was
we
the
need to
slap
just
bass.
tone this down. Yeah.
The slap bass you had to, well, and they used it. I mean, it was part of Johnny Cash's sound.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But the slap bass versus the just the notes.
So did Chet and Johnny Cash play together as well?
They knew each other, and if it was like an award show or something.
Right.
But no, see, Cash was on Columbia. Chet was RCA.
Oh, so that would often be the dividing thing, was just which label you were on.
Yeah.
What a strange thing, really, if you think about it. Like, I mean, were there divisions in music that could have happened and would have happened if it wasn't for the necessity of loyalty to your label?
Well, if you talk about songwriting, if you were an ASCAP writer, you couldn't write with a BMI writer.
Couldn't even write with somebody. Yeah.
They wouldn't license them separately.
Wow.
And that's why Fred Rose had two names. One is Fred Rose was an ASCAP, and what was his?
Red Froze?
No, Fred Rose and Floyd Collins, something like that, was his BMI name.
Wow.
Yeah. So you couldn't do that, and even today, of course, collabs are the big thing today.
Right.
But you have to get permission from the label. So you have an RCA artist or BMG or whatever it is now, Sony actually, and they want to record with the Curb artist. Then you've got to get permission, and then a lot of times a deal. Mm-hmm. You know, okay, this they'll do another one to be released as a single, and this is a single on the Curb label, and that's a single on the Sony label. So there's a lot of now. Of course, it's because collabs have been so successful, and really, you know, streaming, you can double your streams.
Right.
So you want to do, you know, it's a payoff there, but you know that's been you had to get permission because of those contracts. Well,
and it makes sense. I mean, also on that level of writing, producing, creating. Every time, like you said, a musician's always playing, you know, you're always working towards creating something new, and you probably don't want to waste your time creating something that's not going to have a life beyond that moment that you're writing together. Yeah. So therefore you're trying to line everything up to the finish line every time. You know, I guess it's an advantage to be at the early stage where you can just get together and write with anybody. And it doesn't matter if you forgot tomorrow what the song was yesterday.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of quantity. You've got to, songwriting, you've just got to write a whole lot over a period of time before it kicks in of how to write a song.
Yeah. You must have written a lot about songwriting too.
Yeah, I've written 12,873 songs.
You have? No. I mean, you've written. You must have written because of all the books. I didn't see every title, but have you also written or interviewed writers in your career? So you have a lot of perspective on that.
Yeah, and of course, probably one of the most interesting was Bob McDill, legendary songwriter, And he treated it as a regular job,
Right.
9 to 5. He
Right.
would go in, they had a publishing company, he had an office there, and he would go in and he would write all week, and then on Friday he would record a demo.
And Bob McDill is writing in Nashville?
Yes.
So
He's
country
retired
leaning.
now, but he wrote a batch of hits.
Wow. Yeah.
So.
Do you see some of that same approach and attitude in other genres of music as well?
Well, in pop, see, today you don't write a song, you build a song.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you start with, maybe you start with a drummer, or you start with a basic piano track or some kind of track. And then you add stuff on top of it, add hooks, add whatever, lyrics, the, what do they call them that do the lyrics? You know, they just stand there and do stuff off the top of their head.
Yeah.
So you
rapping like freestyle and rap.
Yeah. And lining
or
out.
top line.
Top line. That's what
top
it was.
line.
So you've got that going on, and really they're writing on Pro Tools. So when they finish, they in essence have a record. A lot of times, they may have to add stuff later or whatever, but they basically, they've written a record. But it's they've built it.
Right, exactly.
And you take in pop and rap, there's 9 writers on a. I remember hearing somebody say, hearing about somebody saying that they had programmed the drums so they wanted songwriter credit. And God, I remember Bob Dylan, the Beatles, they had people throwing ideas at them all the time in the studio, and like McCartney's Michelle, that was a friend's wife who taught French, who gave him that, but it's just a Lennon-McCartney song. Bob Dylan, he and Johnny Cash worked on Wanted Man, and Cash always said, "Bob and I wrote this song. It's just got Dylan's name on it. It didn't matter who,
right?
Who changed. And of course on Dylan songs back in the time when everybody was cutting them, they would change them, but they never got co-writer credit. Now, people want to get co-writer credit for being in the studio at the same time as recorded.
Right. I delivered lunch.
Yeah. The phrase, a word is a third. If
a word is a third. That's a Nashville
word,
expression, right?
Then they get a third of the song.
Yeah. And I don't know, has that been an expression in Nashville for a long time, or is that more recent in terms of?
It's more recent.
And do you think that's because the songwriting is one of the last sort of protected realms of possible income from music?
Yeah, and it's to make a living as a musician today, you've got to do, it's the gig economy. You've got to do a lot of things.
Yeah.
Everything from deliver pizza to actually play on a session.
Yeah.
But really, there aren't really any session musicians today that just do sessions like there used to be.
Yeah.
And that's another thing, jumping into songwriting. What about all those great licks? Pretty Woman. Dun.
Yeah.
Whoever came up, well, actually, Roy Orbison and Joe Melton came up with that lick because they were working off of Lucille by Little Richard. But, all these great licks that came along, the musician, their job was just to supply that. It wasn't to get co-writer credit.
Yeah, like Footloose, the down and down and down. I think, if I'm getting this right, I think that was Dennis Herring when he was a session player out in L.A.
Yeah.
And I would have never known that unless somebody told me later, too. But that whole ability to like create those kind of things, and again, Muscle Shoals is a fun topic because it's really like it's coming back on everybody's mind these days, and well, certainly on mine. And the thought of a place where you put a band together, and the Swampers down there would have self-admittedly said, we didn't really know how to play. We just figured it out by playing together every day. Yeah. Which is such a cool thing.
And they saw their job as a work for hire.
Right.
They hired me to play this song. Now people are looking at it as this is creative input, and so I should get a cut of that record. Whereas opposed, if they were in Nashville, they got Union Scale. If they were in Muscle Shoals, they didn't.
Right.
Which is why the Muscle Shoals guys came up here.
Yeah. Why they started Muscle Shoals Sound too, right?
Muscle Shoals Sound was started by Rick Hall just to...
well, I thought that wasn't that Fame that was Rick's, and then they split off to do Muscle Shoals Sound.
That's right. You're right. But they Rick started all of that stuff, and then their key was they had those white musicians who could play black music. They found the white artists,
right?
And so that's the Swampers.
And it was still that story of get a song, get an artist or a singer like Aretha Franklin, put them together with a band in the studio and do it. And the other part of the story of Rick Hall that I appreciated was, to your point earlier, which is, and let's see, who was it? It was Steve Sholes, reaching out to Chet Atkins in Denver and saying, come to Nashville to record, and that launched the sound. Rick seemed to be willing to say, I want to do a studio, I want to make a hit, I'm going to record something, and then I'm getting on a plane and flying to New York, and I'm putting it down on the record label desks until somebody gets it, and launching it like that. So it's that, there has to be a bold move in there somewhere.
Yeah.
You got to do a bold move somehow.
Well, Rick made plenty of those. He came to Nashville for a while and lived up here to produce. He was working with Billy Sherrill. But it never really clicked up here for him. He was just too deep in that Muscle Shoals mud, I guess, to do that. And you bring up something else. It was a hit single. The thing was a hit single.
Yeah.
That's what people wanted. And we're back to where we started. Because even though, you can download an album or you can listen to an album on Spotify, one of those services. But when people listen to an album now, a lot of times, it's like 10 seconds on one song, 30 seconds on this. Oh, I like this one, so I'll put that in my playlist, and then 2 seconds on another song. When it used to be to listen to it, and they're listening as they're walking around.
Right.
It used to be you had to sit down. Only an extension cord could get you a little further away. And, I know in college what we did. And somebody bought an album, and we all got in the room, and we all sat down, and we listened all the way through. And then whoever owned the album got up, turned it over, and you listened to the other side. So we had a whole different way of listening than we do today. And, people would know songs better because they played the album over and over again. Now you got a gazillion songs available to you, and it's easy to hear it only a couple of times.
That's true. It's hard to hear. I mean, it's ironic that we have a world of music at our fingertips over the internet, but it is, I don't know if it's more challenging. I just have to make myself explore more.
Yeah.
I have to intentionally go explore. Whereas, the exploration when I was coming up through school was, a friend introduces you to a record and that's the one you got and you listen to it a bunch. Or you go to the record store and that's what they're playing in the store, or that's what's in the bins, or that's what's in the kiosk, and you put the headphones on. That was a late 90s thing.
Well, jukeboxes earlier than that.
Right.
All those songs that have jukebox in the title or jukebox in the lyrics, it's because that was your social center. You're going to meet, and you're dropping in nickels and dimes with what was it? A nickel a play, 3 for a dime or something like that. And then it got a quarter, 1 for a dime, 3 for a quarter.
That's a lot, actually come to think of it back then, because, now you'd think, a nickel a play is nothing. But back then I remember, my grandparents would tell me you could get an ice cream for a nickel. And so that's a little bit more like $1 per song or something back then, isn't it?
It was, and I remember saving my money.
Today I guess it's like $10 per song.
You'd always want the quarter because you got 3 plays.
Right, yeah.
And, jukebox was key.
Well, so that's interesting. That also prompts me to think about something I thought about when I was listening through your playlist. And Rockstars, we have a playlist in the show notes that Don put together for us. It's just a bunch of Chet Atkins records. It's so good. You just have to go listen. It's going to blow you away if you don't already know all the music and the sounds. But, one of the sounds was the kind of It was, I think it's it's that kind of which is sort of a country. I don't know what you'd call that kind of groove. But the piano's doing the maybe the downbeat is the guitar chords, and the piano's doing the upbeat on the chords, and it reminds me of the sound. I had the fortune to work with a guy named Roscoe Gordon, who was the first artist to record for Sun Records and Sam, and he had a jump blues style, so that was what he was known for. And I was told later, meeting a DJ in New York, that Roscoe was described as being the seed of reggae because his jump blues records showed up in Jamaica on the jukeboxes. Yeah. And so I'm just connecting some dots here. Do you know the kind of jump beat that's in music, whether it's the jump blues or whether it's the kind of country piano style? And do you have any thoughts on, what was influencing what? I mean, we got stride piano goes back a long time, so I guess everything's coming from those eras.
We're talking about Chet Atkins. He plays a role in this defining piano sound that you hear a lot in country. It's when he found was a demo that played that slip note style, and then he got Floyd Kramer to write a song with that, and Chet produced it, and that song was Last Date. Dun, 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 dun.
How do you describe slip note style?
Well, it's you kind of hit the note and it slides off into another.
Oh, sort of like from the black key to the white key.
Yeah. And so it's almost like you've made a mistake, but then you correct it.
Right.
And so that's that sound has dominated piano playing, particularly in Nashville, for years.
Yeah.
So that
and it comes into guitar too. You sort of like slide up to the major third, things like that.
So that Chet has a hand in that. Now, in terms of black music, Chet liked it, but he wasn't into it. That he liked Ray Charles and stuff like that. But I keep thinking of Cecil Gant when you say jump blues, and he's got a song called Nashville Jumps, and on Bullet Records came out of Nashville. Now there's plenty of other examples. A lot of times you had to go to a city with a big black population. So you got L.A., Chicago, Kansas City, Detroit, New York. Those are the places where you can find jump. You got them at Nashville, but they never had a real hit out of Nashville on those jump blues. I'm not sure which song you're talking about with Chet's.
I'd have to go find it. I don't know if I wrote it down. Sorry. But I did write down a bunch of songs to ask you about, so I might as well just jump to that too. Did you finish your thought on that, though? I didn't want to cut you off. Look, when it comes to finishing your music, nothing compares to iZotope Ozone 12. This is a complete mixing and mastering suite of tools with 20 pro modules to shape your sound. You'll find the new bass control for a tight, powerful low end, new unlimiter to restore life to overcompressed tracks, and new stem EQ so you can rebalance vocals and drums and bass without even opening the mix session. And when it's time to make your music loud, the IRC5 Maximizer gives you loud, clean mixes and masters that still sound open and clear. Save time with AI-powered workflows that keep you in the driver's seat. Ozone 12 takes the guesswork out, but you stay in control so your music translates everywhere, from streaming to stage. Go to iZotope.com and use the code ROCK10 for 10% off. Okay, so teen scene. Sounds so good, right? And you've got that, and this happens on a lot of them, is the background vocals, the oohs, and they're so gentle, and they're such a mystery, the way they would do that sound. Talk a little bit about that, about bringing the vocals in. You'd hear it on Elvis records, and you described it as MOR even earlier, right?
Chet said at one time that, the country audience, they didn't want to hear a record if it didn't have the background vocals. And the background vocals came before the strings because they were trying to put together a string section.
Fascinating.
And and the symphony people who they were hiring could only play the notes. They couldn't what's known as swing. If you're a musician, you want a song to swing. It doesn't have to be, Benny Goodman swing, but have that energy. And Anita Kerr found a black guy named Brenton Banks, and he was an incredible musician, and you put him in with, now this is segregated time.
Yeah.
And you put him in a string section, and it could swing. And so this black guy plays a major role in the Nashville sound, playing violin with the string group.
Wow.
That's a fascinating story right there.
So he brought the swing to the string group, and then they were able to sort of get it?
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
That was, and of course he could play piano too, but he mainly did the string sections.
So that's fascinating. So the kind of the that kind of the background vocal stuff, that was introduced initially as a way to bring in the quality of strings to a record when you couldn't.
Yeah, they wouldn't have said it that way.
Right,
it's just it made it a little fuller. Because
right.
remember, stereo comes in here too.
Yeah.
So we go from mono to stereo, and that's the big deal. 55, 56, they start doing stereo. Of course, it takes a while for everybody to buy the new phonographs.
Yeah.
But it fills out the sound so much more.
Yeah, and then so Chet went through that transition, right? And so did that introduce the idea of me and Jerry, the Jerry Reed, Chet Atkins, doing the duets where you have the guitar on one side and another guitar on the other side. They all of a sudden think, oh wow, we can have the two players.
Yeah. Well, no, that in chronological terms that came much later. The thing about Jerry Reed, Chet thought he had done all he could do on the guitar. He thought he'd done everything. It was nothing new for him until he heard Jerry Reed. And there's a sentence Jerry Kennedy used to say that anybody can play as good as Jerry Reed if they practice as much as he did. He's one of those people that never stopped playing.
Wow.
And he could do, because he played with a pick. Chet played with a thumb pick, and then his fingers, they didn't have picks on them.
Okay.
Which is, you can't play Chet's style unless you have a thumb pick. The thumb pick was a revolutionary thing that allowed for thumb picking and finger picking.
And that's partly because if you try and do it with your naked finger, you just kind of can't get it on the string there. I've noticed that, the finger picking fingers require your hand to be in sort of a certain position where your thumbs.
See, the thumb is the driver. That's where the drive comes from.
Yeah.
Is hitting that. And you don't get the same sound hitting it with your thumb.
Right. It's too soft sounding. Yeah.
And so you drive a song. The song gets its energy. It's its force from that thumb pick.
But it's also tricky because there's a muted style. It's like you're doing the thumb pick to drive it, but you're also having to sort of palm mute the string to control it so it doesn't go too wild and sustain too much, right?
Well, another thing that came up with the rhythm section where they have what they call sock rhythm. Mm-hmm. But you'd cut off the sound with your palm
is that a reference to the sock hat on a drum kit?
I don't know about the sock hat, but
that's what Roscoe called the hi-hat.
Oh,
when we were recording with him.
No,
he called it he was calling it the sock hat. Ken Coomer pointed that out to me. He thought that was hilarious.
Ken Coomer, I worked with him on some of the Eddy Arnold stuff.
Oh, that's right on. Yeah, Ken was great. We did. He played on the Roscoe record. That was the very first project we did. Actually, we did a couple of things, but that was the first one we did.
Yeah.
And also, I forgot to mention when I mentioned Bobby Bare, I worked with Bobby Bare Jr. years ago too in the studio too.
Yeah, I just saw something him on Facebook. He was somewhere in Europe or something.
He's playing with the band Guided by Voices. He's been playing bass with those guys for years now, which is a great band.
It's tough to be an independent act.
I think you got to tour a lot.
Yeah,
you got to play a lot.
Well, you stay on the road, and it's constant self-promotion.
Yeah.
That's how you make it today, the work ethic.
Yeah.
You got to put the talent to the side, and then what makes you successful? That work ethic.
And to that point, it's interesting because we should ask you more of this. So to that point, if you're sort of young or you're launching, I'm 57 now. I don't think I'm going to launch my independent career at this point. I'm going to do it just for the fun of it.
Yeah.
You know? But if you're at that stage where your career is ahead of you and you're thinking about it, just knowing that the only way it's going to work is if you go 100% and you just fully dedicate yourself to it, right? But there seems to be more to it, though. You also have to sort of make the cut in the world, or do you think there's many examples of you sort of make the cut for yourself? In other words, do you make your own luck just through practice? I mean, if you're terrible, you're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
But if you're good, if you feel it, have you learned something about that? Do you have any advice for?
Yeah, there's a magic to the music, and you can't explain it. Why do you like one record and the other? There's nothing wrong with the record. It's sound fine. They're in tune. It's all of that. The words are good, but one of them just gets you excited, and that's the magic. That's the magic. We're in a business of magic.
Yeah,
and that's the mystery. You can never explain why. And I know that you have seen it here too. Some guy that looks so talented, looks a lot more talented than whoever's at the top now, but they never made it.
Yeah.
And then some guy.
So you think there was somebody more talented than Chet Atkins?
Yeah. Let me put it this way.
Oh, that's great. What a good question.
He always said he wasn't the greatest guitar player,
Chet
but
did.
he was the most well-known. I mean, his name and the guitar was synonymous for a number of years. So he was the best-known guitar player. But Chet never was a rocker. You talk about the Teen Scene song.
Right.
He's trying to play rock and roll, but he doesn't have that wild abandon that rock and roll has. And some of the jazz guys. He could hang with anybody. He really could. I mean, if you put him in a rock and roll band, he could play along with it. But you could tell it wasn't real rock and roll.
Yeah.
He played on some of Elvis's records, but Elvis is kind of a country-based rock and roll still. So it all fit. But Chet was the best known player, and he admitted himself he wasn't the greatest guitar player.
Yeah, so that's interesting. That's an interesting takeaway.
He wasn't the greatest because there are different types of guitar players.
Right, of course. And then listening to Chet's music too, it reminded me much of the composition and the way that a melody would be presented reminded me of Django Reinhardt too.
Oh God, yes.
And did those two were there lives crossing? Like I don't know, I don't remember when Django died and Chet got started. So they were. Django was long before Chet, or they had a chance to meet?
Chet went to a concert where Django played.
Oh, so they did get a chance to meet.
Well, yeah, they met. Chet said, I'd always wanted to play for him, but he was in a hurry, and Django couldn't speak English. It was in Chicago, and Django was with Duke Ellington's band playing there. Chet discovered Django Reinhardt because if you're a guitar player or if you're a musician, you knew about Django Reinhardt.
Right.
So it was in the library at WNOX in Knoxville, and there was a Django Reinhardt record, and somebody pulled it up and said, you got to listen to this. And so that was the spark. And as time went on, he heard more. Then he would seek out Django Reinhardt records. And he recorded a lot of Django Reinhardt songs.
Yeah. Oh, he did? Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I didn't
but
pick up on that yet.
He never played with him, and he met him live for a handshake. Chet said it was the only time he'd ever gotten an autograph, is he got his.
That's wild.
And
did he get Django to sign Chet's guitar?
No, it was a piece of paper. And Chet said, could you sign this? And Django said, do you have a pencil?
That's great.
Because he was French.
That's great. I actually have my nylon string hanging up behind me, which we were talking about earlier, but off mic. But previous to that, I had my banjo hung up there, and that's the one instrument that I went to the banjo meltdown in when I was at MTSU, and got John Hartford and all these players to sign my banjo once. And I'm like, so glad that I did that.
You know the definition of a gentleman? Someone who can play the banjo but chooses not to.
The banjo gets all the jokes.
Oh,
Come on, people.
I know.
What about the accordion? There's some great accordion on Chet's records too. Who might that have been? Do you know?
The accordion.
And actually, I didn't hear any banjo on Chet's records.
You'd hear it every now and then on the Super Pickers album. He had some, and you'd hear it now and then. The accordion, of course, Pee Wee King, but he was in Louisville most of the time. I don't know who would be playing the accordion on Chet's
What about
records.
piano?
Oh, well, you got Floyd Kramer a lot.
Yeah.
There was a guy named, what was his name? Way back in the early days, he was in the WSM band. I can't remember. And then, of course, Pig Robbins just sort of takes over on all of that. But he had this guy named Marvin Hughes that Chet they came out of the WSM band, big band, that he had. What was that? Papa John Gordy was in the early days. He played on some Chet's records.
But, great name. Name. It reminds me of the drummer, Papa Joe Jones, the Papa Jays.
Yeah.
I guess that was probably a very different time too. Although if I see a black and white video, then that brings it up to the 50s, 40s and 50s. So
in 56, they have to go color.
Right. Oh, 56 is when the TV went color?
Yeah.
Wow.
100% color. Yeah, that was a Congress had to pass that, or FCC, I should say.
And when did The Wizard of Oz, the film, get made? Was before
1939.
1939. Oh, so Wizard of Oz was also was that one of the first color films? They did the black and white to color, didn't they? Didn't they go from black and white to color in the film?
I don't know.
I think they did, and so I was thinking of it in the context of it was a reference to film going from black and white to color. Uh-huh. So, and when you say the TV went to color, it just made me think about like how if somebody uses a black and white to color reference in something, it would probably have come out at a time where people still remembered that had just happened,
Yeah, 56, that's when they passed, FCC passed a ruling that TV had to be all color. And if you watch the Lawrence Welk show on Saturday nights, you can see them black and white and then color. So you pretty much know where the dividing point is.
Those are great. Rockstars, if you haven't checked out Lawrence Welk and the Lawrence Welk show, highly recommend it. It's a real trip down. For you, it won't be memory lane. For some of us, it might be. But just the level of musicianship that's in there and all the players and everything, it's so great to see that whole ensemble.
It explains why the 60s generation went to Jimi Hendrix.
Well, it's great to rediscover these old sounds too, because sure, it can be easy to point a finger at a Lawrence Welk thing and think, you use the word MOR, middle of the road. It's easy to call something like soft rock or, adult contemporary and, describe the ways that music can be made a little more bland so that it's more, palatable. But at the same time, there's an element to those things that's still just so cool. And all you have to do is just really open your mind to a little bit. I used to go around, I remember in the 80s, the joke was Muzak, that's just Muzak. I used to go around the grocery stores and the elevators listening to them, I'm like, that's kind of cool, I don't know, there's something cool about that, weird combo of instruments and and
a melody.
Yeah, gentle
melody. A
gentle attitude to a great melody, recomposed and rearranged. So I always appreciated that. Did Chet have people that he sort of brought up or mentored and perform with young players? I'm thinking of one in particular that I got to work with, who is Pat Bergeson.
Oh, yeah. Chet mentored a lot of people. Especially on the guitar. was a guy named Tommy Thompson. And anyway, he helped. And of course, Jerry Reed helped him get the record deal and produced his hits. Chet was, and especially as Chet got older, he kept looking for young guys because he wanted to stay young. He wanted to stay fresh.
Right.
He wanted to find people who could play what he couldn't play.
Right.
He was always challenging himself, wanting to do more. And I'm kind of blank on some of the guitar players that he mentored, but it was a bunch of instrumentalists.
Are you recording your own music or other people's music in your studio, but you're having trouble figuring out how to get your mixes to sound great? Do they sound weak and distant or lack punch and clarity? Well, I've got a gift for you to help you take your mixes from sounding like basement demos to sounding a lot more like professional mixes. And it's my free course called Mix Master Bundle. This course will show you how to get pro-sounding mixes from your home studio with free and stock plugins in Pro Tools. And the best part is, these mixing techniques will work for you in any DAW, whether you're in Logic, Cubase, PreSonus Studio One, Reaper, or anything you can think of. Are you ready to make your best record ever? Then go to mixmasterbundle.com to get started for free now, and you can find the clickable link in the show notes of this episode. I feel like for a lot of legacy artists, it's usually the drummer that comes in as the first young member of the band, you know? But maybe with Chet, he was like, no, we're not worried about the drums.
He was mostly mentoring guitar players.
Yeah.
But he did a bunch of them.
Yeah, and Pat Bergeson is an incredible guitar player.
Yeah.
You know? And I got to record him in my studio and over at Alex the Great in Berry Hill. And I remember he brought in, I guess he had inherited Chet's nylon string.
Uh-huh.
And so he brought it in for a session. And there I am. It was a record I was doing where Pat's playing guitar and then a cellist came in. And here I am trying to put a mic up in front of Chet Atkins' nylon string guitar. And I'm just thinking, holy shit, I don't want to have this mic fall over on, on my cheap, home studio stand. So I learned how to do that. And then I think the cellist brought in a cello from the 1700s.
Oh, jeez.
And I was like, and I'm trying to put a Coles, a heavy Coles ribbon mic up on a stand. And if you're familiar with that, those things, they could pull a stand over really easy,
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. So let me see, what else? Maybe let's talk a little more about the Nashville studios then. What were the studios in Nashville during Chet's career that come to mind for you? So studio, RCAB, Quonset Hut, any others that are worth, because our audience really loves the studio.
Yeah.
But just things that come to mind for you about, and if I don't want to put you on the spot for the technology too much, but maybe the description of how the studio was conceived and laid out and, how would a band record together through those times? You said it was live to disc at first.
Well, it was live to disc back when he started, which was the 1940s. And then he did transcriptions with the Carter family, which is how Steve Sholes found him. Those transcriptions, they were direct to disc. Those big, if you've ever seen one of those big transcriptions. And of course, radio stations could use them as a radio show.
So a transcription is the name of a kind of vinyl?
Yeah, it's a big. Some of them run on 33 1/3, and I've seen some that run on 16.
Oh, interesting.
And it has a 15-minute show there. So it's 15
I see.
minutes.
So it's meant to be. So transcription was because they were thinking of it as dialogue for radio.
Yeah, they would ship it out to radio stations. And so a radio station could program it, and there'd be spots in there empty that you could put in an ad.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah, so that's they were quite popular for a long time because, radio stations had a transition. They went from live music to what they called canned music. We call it records, but canned music. But in the midst of all of that, there's those growing pains of how can you have a show with top talent when you're a local station out in McMinnville. So those transcriptions would do that.
That's fascinating. So that's the beginning of the pre-programmed content.
Yeah.
It's the original rerun. Well, it wasn't a rerun at that point.
Well, it started with the Musicians Union fought for radio airplay, fought against radio airplay. They thought if you could get it for free, you wouldn't buy it.
Right.
And so the transcriptions really came after World War II. That's really when, because you had at the end of World War II, they could start licensing stations again. Everything was in a holding pattern during World War II. So there was just a whole bunch of stations appear, and that's when you get R&B on the radio. That's when you get country other than the barn dances on the radio.
Wow, that's fascinating. All right, so let's see. So the how did we get into that? I guess I was asking about studios.
You were asking me about microphones, and I really can't. I'm not.
Well, less about microphones, but more about just the different studios or how the musicians, these fundamental things like live to disc, bands in a room in a circle versus, the multi-track age where things were isolated, where they became overdubs, even just tuning guitars. We were talking about how
it started coming in from a single channel.
Yeah.
And then it had a 3-channel thing, and you could overdub a vocal or something like that. But look at the Beatles. If you know about their record, they are playing and singing the song live as they're putting down.
Right,
now they would,
right.
As time progressed, they were adding things. They were what they call superimposing, which would doubling and tracking and that sort of thing. But this started out, and this, you played and you sang, and musicians today can't even fathom, singers can't fathom that, how to do all that at one time and come out as good as a Beatles record.
Well, and the point you were making earlier of music being kind of assembled these days instead of songwriting in the traditional way. The earliest version of songwriting or songwriting where you write on your guitar or whatever your instrument is and you write it down in your notebook. I mean, I was listening or reading an interview with Townes Van Zandt where he's talking about writing a song, and he'd stay up all night and write it and then write it down. And he'd wake up in the morning and he just still had it in his head. So like that kind of writing is a style of writing where you have to be able to perform it and sing it at the same time. And that's how you discover the song, where the studio version can be more like you come up with the music and then you figure out how to fit these words and singing together. It's like you're discovering each puzzle piece on its own.
Yeah, the studio is an instrument in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, now that's a singer-songwriter approach. Now, if you have just a singer who doesn't, write their own songs or something like that, then you got a different approach. Then you are, well, let's jump back to Frank Sinatra. Sinatra's thing was, and today, we're stuck in a situation where people think an artist is not legitimate if they didn't write the song,
right?
And but you go back to Frank Sinatra or Eddy Arnold or people like that.
Somebody else was writing the song.
Somebody else was writing it, and their thing was interpretation.
Right.
They wanted to present that song, and Roy Acuff called it selling the song. He said, I could always sell a song, to get it over to the crowd, and so that's a whole different approach. It's not quite what you were asking, but that's a different.
Yeah.
Within that music business world, well, first of all, the music business is the business, and the technology all roll together. They're all important.
Yeah.
And so they all play different roles with different artists. Like originally we were talking about the different types of producers.
Yeah.
Different types of artists. How do you capture all that? The other thing you brought up was, like how do you know if somebody has it or not?
Right.
And what I tell students and what I tell young people, get in front of a crowd. They'll let you know. And the sad thing is they come to town and they've only played sitting on the side of the bed. They haven't really played out anywhere.
Yeah.
And so, you tell them to do that. Well, where do I find there's a phrase, he who sings will always find a song. If you've got it, you'll figure out a way to get in front of a crowd. And of course, at Belmont. And MTSU, they have opportunities for people to play, songwriters to play, and all of that. And,
Yeah, I mean, I heard that Bob Dylan was just a total ham as he was a teenager, just like constantly trying to get everybody to, playing.
A musician always plays. And, he had those little bands, the Golden Chords and stuff like that, yeah. And then, of course, folk music was big, so he could do that by himself.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things I enjoy doing is we were chatting about ChatGPT earlier. You mentioned it, and so I have fun just like saying like, oh, what questions do you think would be good? So it gave me a couple of ones. Can I ask him?
Yeah.
All right. So this comes from the robots, Don. Don, with over 30 books, countless liner notes, and more album credits than most people have playlists, do you ever wake up in the middle of the night wondering, wait, did I already write a book about that?
Now, I have to put that into ChatGPT for the answer, right?
Oh, yeah, there you go. Now we're talking. Now there's an interview.
Well, I have had to look up stuff in my own books that I've forgotten.
I can believe that.
And I've forgotten. Maybe I remember something about it, but I need to.
I have to do that with this podcast. I go back and Google it, and who said that again? But oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So in that respect, I don't. No, a book's going to take you about 2 years. By the end of 2 years, you remember it.
Yeah, I'll bet. And now, are you? Have you really? You really understand the process of writing a book at this point?
Yeah, I should. I should know that.
So when you go into one, you know what you got to do when you got to do it.
Yeah.
But then there must be discoveries along the way. Do you find surprises? Did you find any surprises about your own process writing the Chet Atkins book?
No, because by the time I'd gotten to Chet Atkins, I'd pretty well figured out how to do that. As the old saying, the hardest part of writing is putting the seat of your pants on the seat of the chair and starting.
Yeah.
And that's self-discipline is so important in that. And I have it's not a rigid schedule, but it's pretty tight. I get up 4:15 every morning. I go to the Y, I work out, come back, get breakfast, go to the office. I can't work at home. I'm just not one of those people that can work at home. And generally emails and phone calls and stuff in the morning, and then my writing is generally done in the afternoon.
At post-lunch or something like that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's good to split it up with a break somehow. It's hard to go. I can't shift my mind instantly from work to creative.
Yeah, it's hard. And plus, in order to be creative, you need a period of time. That's why I say you go in the office and lock the door, and you've got the rest of the afternoon. You've got several hours to work. But like now with all these interviews and podcasts and stuff, I'm too distracted, so I'm not writing. I'm not working on anything now.
All right, well, I'm going to wrap this one up here, but and get you back to the writing machines. Here's the other one it gave you. You've been in music business since 1973. Do you think Chet Atkins would have survived TikTok?
He's probably on TikTok.
He's probably on TikTok.
I will say that we can't have a Chet Atkins today like we had a Chet Atkins then. He's an artist. He's an executive. He's a producer. He's all those things. The world is smaller than. So I think he would have to be one or the other. He'd have to be either an executive or a producer or an artist.
Hopefully, he'd be a guitar player.
Yeah, and that's what he wants. He wanted his legacy to be that. But I have a feeling that maybe all of those artists he produced and what he did for RCA here in Nashville might outlive him because people don't play the Chet Atkins style now.
Right.
So, but I think he. Well, I hear his stuff on NPR in the morning.
Right.
They have that little break sometimes between stories, and there'll be some Chet picking.
I love it. I love playing like that, or trying to figure it out. I'm sure I only play the most rudimentary versions, but it just makes it a lot of fun to play, and it's fun when playing your instrument can feel like a puzzle you're trying to figure out a little bit too. So this is a question that I ask all my guests on the show, and it's hypothetical, and we get to take the Wayback Studio machine, and you go back in time, and you find younger Don and say, listen, Don, I've come back to give you this one bit of advice. Here's the single most important thing you need to know. To be a rock star of the studio yourself one day, that's usually the way the question goes. Maybe for yourself, it would be more related to advice you'd just like to give yourself in terms of your career and writing and all that, and the way it intersects with music.
I would say, I'd tell myself, don't worry, it's going to be all right. It'll come out okay in the end. And it has for me.
Yeah.
I live a very nice, blessed, as they say, a blessed life, and doing what I love to do and enjoying it. So the only emphasis, during the down times, don't worry, you'll get through this.
Yeah.
So that's, other than the stupid things I've done, don't do stupid things anymore, but that's part of life too.
Hopefully coming to Nashville in a VW camper bus is not what you would consider one of the stupid things, but one of the smart things.
Well, it turned out okay.
Yeah.
It turned out well. Like I said, things are a lot easier today and stuff, but I wanted to be in Nashville. I grew up wanting to be in Nashville.
Did anybody tell you, what are you doing when you did that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they think you're dumb. Why would you do that? You've just got to have a lot of nerve, really.
Yeah.
It's, nerve, I don't have a lot of talent. I've just got a lot of nerve.
That's great.
That's great. For doing what I've done.
That's a great quote. Don, thank you so much for being on the podcast with us. What a pleasure to hang out with you and get to meet you and have this conversation. Can you let the rock stars please know, where can they find your new book? Where can they find you online? What if they want to learn more about you or just read more of your great books?
Okay. Well, you can find the book on Amazon. You can find just about any of my books, although the Nashville Sound book has gone out of print. But the Chet Atkins book is on Amazon. And if you want to find more about me, I have a website, doncusic.com. If you just plain old Google me, I'm always having people come up and say, I didn't know this, that, or the other. Where did you find out? Well, I Googled you. So
here's all the books that Don's written, Rockstars.
Yeah.
A lot of good stuff. So if you're curious about any of this history, I know where to go to hone up on my understanding of music history in Nashville, that's for sure. And baseball, too. You wrote about baseball as well.
In fact, I've written a book on, it's a novel on Junior Gilliam, who was with the Dodgers, but he was born in Nashville. And so that's sitting in a file right now.
How about this one? Book cover image coming soon.
Oh, that's the Minnie Pearl.
Oh, cool. I remember. So, of course, I know her from all the Spick and Span ads when I was a kid growing up.
Yeah.
With the hat.
She did Spick and Span?
I think it was. Would she come in and it was in the TV ad, and she would have her hat on with a little brand new. The price tag was still on it, right? Which I actually, when I saw that and I saw that show up, that kind of stuff show up, and I think in the hip hop world in the '80s, I thought, wow, that's a total throwback. It's like you still got the new price tag on something.
Yep.
Maybe it was a different meaning.
I've got a co-writer on that book, but that'll be the index has been done and that's been done, so it'll be out in October.
Oh, cool! Right on. Well, this will be out. You'll be able to go read about Chet Atkins, read about Minnie Pearl, read about Hank Williams, all kinds of stuff. So, Don, thank you so much for joining me here. Thanks for coming all the way over to the studio.
Thank you for inviting me.
My pleasure, man. Rockstars, thank you for watching. Please, if you enjoyed this video, remember to like the video, subscribe to our channel, and please, please, please drop some sort of comment in the comment, even if you just say, listen to it, liked it, whatever, because that really helps us as on YouTube. Yeah,
don't write
grow.
This sucks. Don't write this sucks.
No, actually that helps too. It even helps. Believe it or not, even that helps. But we appreciate it, and Don, it's a pleasure, man. I look forward to it. Sorry we couldn't do this. We were going to do it remotely initially, and we were going to get to see all your cool bookshelves behind you, but we got a little mini bookshelf there.
That's good.
All right, groovy.
All right, have a great day.
All right, cheers. You too. Thanks so much for listening to Recording Studio Rockstars. If you enjoyed the show and want to help make it better, then please share this episode with your friends on social media and leave a rating and review on iTunes to help the podcast reach more rock stars like yourself. You can click directly over to iTunes or go to rsrockstars.com/review for an easy explanation. And remember to hit the subscribe button to keep up with weekly episodes. And if you're ready to make your best record ever now, then head over to Recording Studio Rockstars Academy, where you can start with my free course at mixmasterbundle.com. Thanks so much for listening, and thanks for being a rock star. I'm Lid Shaw, and this is Recording Studio Rockstars. Now, go make great music. Recording Studio Rockstars would like to give a big thank you to our fantastic sponsors who help make this episode possible. Isotope, Native Instruments, Atom Audio, SAE Institute, Spectra 1964, and Picker. And remember to take advantage of our special coupon code ROCK10 for 10% off at isotope.com and nativeinstruments.com for any plug-in purchase. Don't forget, you can start mixing right now with my free course, Mixmaster Bundle. You'll find the link in the show notes below. And if you enjoyed Recording Studio Rockstars, please check out our sponsors also in those links in the show notes. These are all things I highly recommend for your studio. They are going to help you make your best record ever. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed this, it's a great way to help support the show, and I really appreciate it, and I thank you as well. I'd also like to thank our fantastic team here at Recording Studio Rockstars: Vlad Weselchenko, Jeffrey Simmons, and Max Young. Thank you so much for watching and listening, Rockstars, and we'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.